Welcome. Thank you for coming tonight. This presentation, The Changing Face of Downtown Cary, from the Friends of the Page Walker, in partnership with the town of Cary, is a visual tour of historic properties in downtown Cary. Tonight we will learn about the evolution of Chatham Street as Cary grew from a railroad town to a suburban highway town to an urbanized town. And we'll hear stories about historic properties along Chatham Street and the people associated with them. This is the first in a planned series, an annual series of presentations. We're focusing on Chatham Street in this presentation, and we will review other sections of downtown in future programs. It's fitting that we're offering this program during May, which is designated nationally as Historic Preservation Month. It began in 1973 as National Preservation Week and was extended to the entire month in 2005. The 1973 Presidential Proclamation declared this. As the pace of change accelerates in the world around us, Americans more than ever need a lively awareness of our roots and origins in the past on which to base our sense of identity in the present and our directions for the future. Although people lived in and around Cary for many years prior, Cary began around 1870 as a railroad town where Frank Page built a depot and a hotel to serve passengers on the newly constructed Chatham, later known as the Seaboard Railroad. The railroad sparked the development of our community as churches, businesses, residences, and a school sprung up in what's now downtown Cary. With the rising popularity of the automobile in the first half of the 20th century, Cary grew into a suburban town. In the 1920s, the paved Western Wake Highway, now Western Boulevard, connected Cary to Raleigh via automobile, followed by paved roads to Durham and Apex. The road from Raleigh to Cary was rerouted from Cedar Street to Chatham Street, then just a country lane, and Chatham Street served as U.S. Highway 1. Motor hotels around Cary sprang up, along with gas stations, to service increased vehicular traffic through our little town. Cary became a small suburb of Raleigh, with about 3,000 people in 1960. With the arrival of Research Triangle Park and IBM in the 1960s, Cary began a period of rapid growth. By 1970, the population had more than doubled to nearly 8,000. Cary pioneered the concept of planned unit developments for new housing as the rapid growth continued, surpassing 100,000 people in 2002. Today's Cary has many urban elements. It is an employment center and a destination of its own, no longer just a suburb, with a population approaching 200,000 people. I'm Marla Dorrell. Courtney Von Verlaine, Bob Myers, and I will be presenting this evening. Courtney serves on the Town of Cary Historic Preservation Commission. Bob and I are volunteers with the Friends of the Page Walker, and we both also happen to be former members of the Historic Preservation Commission. Carla Jordan Michaels, Carla, where are you? Okay. Carla Jordan Michaels is also a Friends volunteer, and she performed research and drew on her vast knowledge and archives to generate much of the content in this presentation, and we are most grateful for her efforts. We have another volunteer, Brent Miller, to thank for creating the slideshow and writing the script. Brent is a former member of the Historic Preservation Commission. He's also our projectionist this evening. We know you may have questions that arise during the presentation. We'll ask that you please hold them until the end, where we'll be happy to answer them, or at least we hope Carla will. These aerial views that span the suburban highway era of Cary show how development has changed Chatham Street through the years. The images are rotated 90 degrees to facilitate comparison. East is at the top of each image. This map shows the properties along Chatham Street that we'll talk about this evening. We'll move from west to east, beginning with the building that currently houses the Farm Bakery, and moving along West Chatham Street to the original location of the Ivy Ellington House, then to Everybody's Store and Ashworth's Drugs. We'll mention two of the quadrants at the intersection of Chatham Street and Academy Street, the Fidelity Bank corner and Uncle Bob's corner. We'll proceed along East Chatham Street with Gherkin's Automotive, the Cary Theater, Rogers Motel and Restaurant, and the Phillips House. We'll conclude with a wonderful story that involves the Williams House and the WPTF transmitter building. Not all of these structures still exist. We'll talk about the evolution of the sites along Chatham Street and the people and stories associated with them. Elva Templeton, who was the daughter of Dr. J.M. Templeton, drew a map showing various homes and businesses on the streets in Cary around 1906. This map was based on her memory, and it's a great historic resource that we'll use several times during this presentation. This section of Elva Templeton's map shows the area around the intersection of Harrison Avenue and Chatham Street. South Harrison was later aligned with North Harrison to make a straight intersection. In modern times, this was known as the Sorrell Building. After beginning their business in 1977 at 111 West Chatham Street, Sorrell Paint and Wallpaper moved to 107 West Chatham and then finally to 220 West Chatham in 1991, where the business remained for many years. In fact, I bought wallpaper. The Farm Bakery, which began in 1999 with a store on Cary Parkway, opened their second retail store and main bakery in this building in 2017 and remains there today. In 2007, local artist Val Fox painted a mural on the side of the Sorrell building. It's not easy to capture the entire mural in a single photographic image, especially with no cars parking in front. But our friend Hal Goodcreed was able to do so. Many of the people depicted are taken from real life. For example, Samuel Fenton Cary, the town's namesake, is shown on the right near the word Cary. Ralph and Paul Ashworth appear in the center of the mural. Now, can you find Clay Aiken? He's on the left side next to the table. The Ivy Ellington House, despite its Gothic Revival architecture, was never a church. But it's understandable that many people mistake it for a church, and as it turns out, that probably was intentional. Gothic Revival style is often associated with church architecture, and so it often signified a Christian dwelling. The Ivy Ellington House is a rare example of Gothic Revival architecture with vertical board and batten siding. In fact, the footprint of the original house is the classic cathedral plan of a cross. The Ivy Ellington House dates back to Cary's railroad era. Records indicate that Alonzo Crocker built the house around 1874 at a cost of around $300. But he never actually lived in the house. J.T. Poole and his wife Betty purchased the house in 1882. They lived in the house until 1888, when it was sold to Anderson Betts and his wife Elizabeth Jordan Betts, sister to Henry B. Jordan, early Cary resident and twice mayor of Cary. In 1892, they sold the house to Thaddeus and Mary Ivy. Even though Thaddeus and Mary Ivy lived in the house for only 5 years, their family lived in other parts of Cary for many years and had a lasting impact on the community. Thaddeus Ivy moved to Cary in 1891 to escape city life in Raleigh and to raise his family in the country. Their daughter Esther was born in 1890 in Wake Forest, while her father was a student. She graduated from Cary High School in 1906 and from Guilford College a few years later. She moved into the Raven House on South Academy Street with her family in 1922 and lived there until her death in 1989 at age 99. The house became known as the Esther Ivy House. It's now Lane Addison Bridal Shop, which is ironic. Esther Ivy was a lifelong single lady. Charles Romulus Rom Scott, a prominent Chatham County native, bought the Ivy Ellington house in 1898 and owned it until 1918. Cattle drives from Chatham County to Raleigh were conducted while he owned the house, with cattle driven right down Chatham Street. Sometimes turkeys accompanied the cattle drive and roosted in the trees around the Ivy Ellington, according to Miss Esther. The house functioned as a, quote, a horse stopping place, as described in Peggy Van Scoyock's book of a similar type. Charles Romulus Scott operated Scott & Son Grocery and Dry Goods with his son, Charles William Scott. In addition to running the store, Charles Scott worked as a county tax assessor. Allegations of corruption in 1900 led to his being a witness in the investigation. He was eventually exonerated. This was part of his testimony. Talking about his own personal house, Scott was asked by the prosecutor, "What was your house valued at?" Scott answered, "It's an old house, worth about $600. The prosecutor asked, "What sort of house is it?" Scott replied, "The ugliest in Cary." Now, perhaps we can assume that Mr. Scott was not a fan of Gothic Revival architecture, but we are. After Scott, Joseph Smith owned the house for less than a year before it was sold to John Harrison Ellington in 1919. Ellington owned the house for 30 years. As Cary began to transition to a suburban highway town, Ellington sold the house in 1946 to Harvey H. Waddell. The Waddell family owned the house for more than 60 years. H. Waddell moved to Cary in 1917 to work as a mechanic. He was appointed Cary's first fire chief in 1923 and was elected mayor in 1929 and served a 4-year term. He was twice elected as a town commissioner. In 1949, he was appointed as a local judge and held that position for 9 years. He was elected to the town council in 1960 and served there for 4 years. Waddell was the first owner to substantially alter the house. Part of that was by necessity when Hurricane Hazel ripped off the front section. Waddell repaired the front of the house, but removed the porch. In the 1950s, he added a small kitchen and bathroom on the back of the house. By the late 1960s, the family was leasing the house. In 1972, a year before his death, Waddell deeded the house to his 2 daughters. In 1984, his daughter Melba sold her half to her sister Eva and Eva's husband, Jefferson Sugg. Around 2000, Jefferson Sugg partially remodeled the house. He rebuilt the front gable, restoring it to its original form. He also added a modern bathroom in the back. He began commercial leasing of the house after it was remodeled. After his death in 2010, the town of Cary bought the house. From 2011 to 2022, the lot around the house was used as a weekly meeting spot for the Cary Farmers Market. In this more urbanized era, a large development was planned that included the Ivy Ellington house site. So the house was moved from Chatham Street to the old library site on Academy Street on February 20, 2023. Since then, the house has undergone a full rehabilitation and modernization. That includes replacing the metal roof with period-appropriate wooden shakes and rebuilding the chimneys on each end. The house now serves as offices for the downtown Cary Park staff. In just 10 days, on May 18, the town will hold an official ribbon-cutting ceremony for the opening of the Ivy Ellington House, and the public is invited to tour the house then. Don't miss it. The Friends believe that the Ivy Ellington House is among Cary's most significant historical structures, so it is one of 5 properties to earn a LDI-FOB designation. Now you might guess, that stands for Lie Down in Front of Bulldozers, signifying that we'll go to great lengths to preserve this treasure. Now I'll introduce Courtney Bond-Delane, who will continue our journey east on Chatham Street.
Thank you, Marla. All right, we'll move now next door and across the street to the Everybody's Store. This turn-of-the-century building at 122 West Chatham Street, known as Everybody's Store, also has been a deli, Denning's grocery store, Powell's clothing store, the Dorcas shop, and Creative Images. The earliest known advertisement for Everybody's Store comes from the 1917 high school. One of the proprietors was Lucy Virginia Rivas. The Rivas family was a prosperous family originally from Granville County. Lucy was born in 1867 and the family located to Cary by 1880. As a single female, she ran the post office in Cary as postmistress from 1900 to 1914. We may think of working in the post office as a rather sedate job, and it usually isn't filled with danger, but one of Lucy's most daring acts was saving the mail in the post office that was located in the tobacco factory building at the corner of Academy and Cedar Street, when that building burned down in 1908. A newspaper account says that Miss Lucy Rivas and scores of persons expecting letters, especially the young people of Cary High School, helped save the mail. The alarm for the fire was raised by none other than Mrs. Helen Walker, proprietress of the hotel, who called loud and long until she had awakened to energetic action the people on her side of town. As a single woman, Lucy led a full life. She and her friends went camping and traveled to the Jamestown exhibition of 1907. Lucy ran a millinery shop in the mayor's office, located in a brick tobacco factory building before it burned. Here we see the ladies in front of Cary High School around 1912. Might these stunning hats have been created by Lucy Rivas? We don't know, but these are representatives of the style of the time. After she left the post office, she ran Everybody's Store for several years. At the age of 52 in 1919, she married recent widower, Reverend Valerius Addison Royal. She lived until 1959, passing away at the age of 91. She is buried in Hillcrest Cemetery in Cary, along with other family members. You may have heard of her nephew, H.R. Adams, or Henry Rivas Adams, owner of Adams Drug Store, which he sold to Ralph and Daphne Ashworth in 1957. For a while, the Dorcas shop operated out of this building, with a coiffure shop, that is a highfalutin beauty shop, and a church upstairs. The stairs still exist today, and those are the stairs you used to get up to the walk-up. The Wake County Book of Maps had a map that showed this store as a cafe, perhaps the same as when it was the deli. Miss Elba Templeton's map showed it as the site of the Lynn store. A 1926 deed names the cafe as Westside Inn Cafe. Carla Michaels took interior photos in 2016 when the building still retained tin ceiling tiles with egg and dart border on the ground floor. Based on an internet search, Carla believes the egg and dart is applied upside down. Powell's Clothing opened in 1965 in this building. This advertisement shows that while Powell's Clothing was doing business at 122 West Chatham Street, Cary Clothiers operated at 122 East Chatham Street at the exact same time. Cary had dueling clothiers. We'll learn more about Cary Clothiers later in the presentation. Most recently, the building has housed Creative Images. This is a photo from 2016. Now we're moving across the way to Uncle Bob's Corner. This photo from the 1917 Cary High School yearbook shows what was known as Uncle Bob's Corner, the southwest quadrant of Chatham Street and Academy Street. In the center is Uncle Bob's Corner, the home and shop of Robert Harrison. In 1879, Cary's founder, Frank Page, sold a prime corner lot at the intersection of Academy and Chatham Streets to Alice G. Harrison, the wife of Robert J. Harrison, owner of Harrison Wagon Company, inventor, and future mayor of the town of Cary. The southwest corner of the intersection became the home of the Harrison family and was conveniently located close to the wagon works. Over the years, the wagon company was wildly successful, with good quality wagons sold far and wide. However, the suburban highway era was underway, and automobiles replaced wagons. According to Tom Burns, around and about Cary, the company declined after 1900 and closed about 1913. Harrison then operated a cafe and store on this corner. Uncle Bob, as he was known to students from Cary High School, was a popular figure at school and in town. A sketch from the 1917 CH site Cary High School yearbook describes Uncle Bob. We know you probably can't read this article on the screen, but here are some highlights from it. Uncle Bob is a favorite with all the boys and proves to be a great hindrance to ideal self-government in the sense that he draws the boys down the street when they should be studying. He can tell the most unthought of experience or joke that is possible to imagine. His favorite topic relates to the experience that he had with girls when he was young. Only once in several years have we seen Uncle Bob heat up, and that was during the presidential election last fall when his favorite was defeated. Uncle Bob's Corner is the loafing place of the town. Soon after the sketch appeared in the yearbook, Uncle Bob, who had been a widower for a number of years, married a lady from Alamance County and moved away to live near Elon College. He then sold the property to J.M. Templeton Jr., son of the beloved town doctor J.M. Templeton. Harrison died at the North Carolina Soldiers' Home on February 8, 1933, and is buried in historic Hillcrest Cemetery in Cary, near the son who predeceased him. The property changed hands several times over the years. In 1933, the Cary Masonic Lodge built a new building on Uncle Bob's Corner. Completed in only 90 days at a cost of $6,600, this was the largest building in town. It housed several businesses as well as the Masonic Lodge on the second floor. The Masonic Lodge symbols can still be seen in stones on the second floor exterior. Henry Adams eventually purchased the building and operated Adams Drug Store. In 1957, Ralph and Daphne Ashworth purchased the store from Adams and operated Ashworth's Drug Store with their son Paul for 67 years. When Paul retired, the store closed. The store will be the new home of Once in a Blue Moon Bakery and Cafe, which plans to expand the menu and keep the soda fountain. Of all the other buildings occupying the intersection of Chatham and Academy in the past 60 years, this is the only one still standing. Now we're moving across the street to the Fidelity Bank corner. Returning to the photo we saw earlier of Uncle Bob's Corner, on the far left is a peek at the Cottage Grocery. That building was relocated to build Hobbies Appliances and Pete's Hardware. On the far right is a glimpse of Gray's store. We have not found a photo that shows the front of the store, but only a 1939 newspaper article that shows its demolition. This photo shows a side view of the building. Note the phone number of 16. This 1916 Cary phone book confirms the telephone number for Gray's store. And there's Lucy Rivas from Everybody's Store at number 10J. And who has the honor of having telephone number 1? J.M. Templeton Jr., who you might remember as the person who purchased the property at Uncle Bob's Corner from Robert Harrison. The Cary phone book remained 1 or 2 pages for many years. Jerry Miller's illustration shows the store and the Gray family home. F.R. Gray and his brother P.D. Gray operated the store. According to this newspaper article, they sold dry goods, hats, caps, boots, shoes, groceries, hay, feedstuffs, farm and women's crockery, furniture, and, if that wasn't enough, general merchandise. The article also notes that in addition to the store, the Gray brothers owned and operated a cotton gin in Cary, and owned stock in the Bank of Cary, Harrison Wagon Company, the Hen Cackle Poultry Supply Company, and Wilkinson Lumber Company. This 1905 Cary High School catalog advertisement lists additional wares sold at Gray's store. The Gray family had plenty of business drama. A safe was blown in 1923 and a store was robbed in 1934. So much for Cary being a sleeping, peaceful town. In 1939, Gray's store was demolished and it became a series of buildings that housed a bank, post office, and more. In 1952, the Cary Branch Bank of Fuquay, the only bank in town at the time, opened a new building on Main Street owned by Henry Adams. This photo shows the bank in 1965, along with the stoplight that was the only one in Cary for many years. These photos show a later renovation of the building and the plaza and building located at this corner today. Next, we're going to the other side of Academy Street to Gherkin's Downtown Auto Repair. Elbert Templeton's circa 1906 map labels this corner as hand pump. We surmise that this location had a water pump at one point because auto travel was in its early stages in this era. But the site became a service station early in Cary's suburban highway era. Early gas pumps were called hand pumps. The gas station apparently was known as the Cary Service Station in the 1930s. This hand-drawn advertisement is from a 1934 fall festival held at Cary High School, now the Cary Arts Center. In 1951, it became an Amoco station operated by Kenneth M. Lloyd. In the 1960s, it was Norwood Oil Company and a Shell station. This photo and caption is from a News and Observer in 2002, when the town of Cary floated the idea to remove automotive businesses from downtown. In 2024, after nearly a century of automotive service, Gherkin's closed. The building was sold to a group who intends to convert it into a restaurant. They have stated their intent to preserve the character of the building. Harking back to its history, the restaurant's name will be Lloyd's Full Service. And now I'll introduce Bob Myers, who will take us to the end of our Chatham Street journey.
Hello. This property was once home to the town's first indoor movie theater, which hosted live performances as well as films. It has also been used as a clothing store, auto parts store, and recording studio. The Chandler family built and operated the theater. According to Randy Chandler, the son, and Faye Chandler Honeycutt, the daughter, in their oral history captured by Peggy Van Scoyoc, the theater was open from 1946 until about 1955, then hosted live performances until 1960. They tell that Patsy Cline and Ernest Tubbs sang there, and Lash LaRue and other Western stars appeared on stage. During its film era, films were delivered at night, and the delivery men would throw them down on the sidewalk, which made an awful racket. The reels were the size of car tires, with 2 reels per film. In 1946, when the theater opened, an adult movie ticket was 13 cents, and a child ticket was 9 cents. In those days, the theater was segregated, with a separate entrance and outside staircase that led to the balcony where African American customers sat. Vestiges of the separate entrance are still visible on the theater wall. Here you can see the bricked up former doorway. In 1960, the building was converted to a clothing store. Randy Chandler and his father, Paul, operated Cary Clothiers from this same site until 1980. You'll recall that this business at 122 East Chatham competed with Powell Clothing at 122 West Chatham in the Everybody's Store building. Randy then continued dressing Cary men at Belk's for even more years. The building then became an auto parts store and later a recording studio. The town of Cary purchased the property in 2011. The building was renovated and expanded in 2012 through 2013 to become a multi-use cultural facility. An additional 3-story building was constructed adjacent to the theater to provide additional support space and rental space. The marquee, long ago removed from the building, was replaced with one that was reminiscent of the original. This site originally had a feed store. We have only aerial photos of that building. Rogers Restaurant and Motel became prominent during the height of Cary's suburban highway era. In oral history captured by Peggy Van Squet, Billy Rogers said his father, Lemuel Len Rogers, opened a restaurant in 1954, where Johnson Jewelers is now. He bought the building at 149 East Chatham in 1961 and moved the restaurant there. Motel rooms were added later. In 1966, Billy and his wife, Barbara Rogers, took over the restaurant and motel from the elder Mr. Rogers. The restaurant was one of only two in Cary. The other was Johnson's Barbecue, and often hosted wedding receptions and rehearsal dinners. It became a gathering spot for politicians on the campaign trail. Billy Rogers tells that in 1966, sausage and ham biscuits were 15 cents, hamburgers were 90 cents, and cheeseburgers were $1, and came with creamy coleslaw and pickle chips. The motel had 7 rooms and an apartment. In 1980, 5 more rooms were added. This Durham Herald-Sun article from 1987 describes a plan by Christian Community in Action to purchase Rogers Motel and turn it into a homeless shelter. A committee of the Cary Chamber of Commerce objected, and that plan never materialized. These photos were taken in 2012. The photo of the office with the chimney was taken just before Rogers Motel was demolished in 2019. In today's more urban Cary, the reconstructed building, now called Rogers East and West, reopened in 2023 with 10,000 square feet of street front retail space and 40,000 square feet of office space. This house was owned by Wilson Cary Phillips and his wife, Stella Phillips. Stella Phillips. Right, okay, I'm sorry. Cary, as he was known, was born in Perquimans County, North Carolina. By 1930, as Cary, the town, not the man, was in transition from a railroad town to a suburban highway town, the Phillips family was living there. Cary Phillips died in 1971 at his home at 214 East Chatham Street. Cary's wife, Stella Phillips, is pictured here on the left with Ida Florence Yates Jordan in the 1930s. Cary and Stella had 3 children, Dorothy, Alvin, and Iris. The son, Alvin, graduated from NC State in the 1940s and was a football star there. Mr. Phillips was a traveling salesman selling household, farm, and grocery items. According to C.Y. Jordan, he had a new car each year for his business, and the old one became the family car. The land in this block of Chatham Street was originally owned by Frank Page, who sold a large parcel to Jacob and Helen Walker. Eventually, that land was sold off in parcels and residences were built. We believe that this occurred as Cary was in the suburban highway era, when US Route 1 came through town and East Chatham Street became a thoroughfare. Let's look at some other houses along East Chatham Street that were built during this time frame. This photo of Jordan family cousins in the 1920s includes the brown 2-story house that still stands at the intersection with Templeton Street. The white house to its left also remains, although it is dilapidated and deteriorated. It was the home of John T. Maynard and his wife, Grace Holloman Maynard. Here's what that same place looks like today. It's a bit of a change from the early suburban highway era to today's urbanized era. The perspective isn't quite the same because there are buildings at the site where this earlier photo was taken. But suppose we could still imagine the Jordan family cousins here. This photo from the same time frame shows other modest houses along East Chatham Street. The Phillips House is a rehabilitation of its success and continues to occupy its original site in Cary's current urbanized era. The business Good Day Cary operated at this location until it closed in December 2024. It's now the home of Littles of Cary, a children's boutique. These 2 buildings are the basis of fascinating stories. Dr. Catherine Laughlin did an hour-long presentation about these two buildings and people associated with them as part of a series of programs by the Friends. Much of the information here is taken from that program, which can be viewed in its entirety on the Friends Cary History YouTube page, YouTube channel. The Williams House was built at 318 East Chatham Street in 1938 by the Rickman Brick Company. Its architectural style is streamlined modern, a late Art Deco style. We know of only one other building with that architectural style in this area, the WPTF Transmitter Building, further east on Chatham Street. WPTF was established by Durham Life Insurance Company in 1927. The call letters represent their motto, "We protect the family." In 1933, the station began operating from the building at 833 East Chatham Street. The WPTF building's architect was William Henley Dietrich, who designed many buildings in the Triangle, including Dorton Arena, Raleigh Little Theater, and many school and university buildings, among others. Because of the similarity in architectural styles, we could surmise that Dietrich also designed the Williams House, but we have not found proof of that. And initially, it was unclear how Rickman Brick Company, which built the Williams House, fit into the picture. Moving back to WPTF, Felton and Margaret Peggy Williams both worked at WPTF, and they were the first people in the Southeast to be married on the air. In 1938, Durham Life Insurance Company, recall they're the ones who own WPTF, deeded the land at 318 East Chatham Street to Rickman Brick Company, who in turn leased it to Felton and Peggy Williams on a rent-to-own basis. The Williamses sold the property in 1945, and it had a series of owners until it was acquired by Chatham Street Commercial, the developers of Chatham Walk, in 2016. In 2018, Chatham Street Commercial moved the salvageable front portion of the house from 318 East Chatham Street to 210 East Chatham Street. That's next door to the Phillips house we just discussed. The Williams House was repurposed as the foyer of the building that currently hosts RBF Champagne Bar, A&B Bridal Shop, that's not a typo, and Bull City Cider Works, although they just recently announced the closing of the Cary Cider Works location. The move and restoration of the Williams House is an example of preserving a piece of Cary's suburban highway era within our current, more urbanized era. Chatham Street has changed significantly as Cary has evolved from a railroad town to a suburban highway town to a more urbanized town. The next time you walk, bike, or drive down Chatham Street, we hope you'll remember the stories you've heard tonight and the people who made Chatham Street one of the most important thoroughfares in Cary. Perhaps you'll remember these: Sorrells, the farm, and the Belle Fox mural; Esther Ivy, Romulus Scott, and the ugliest house in Cary that's now a downtown gem; Everybody's Store, Lucy Rivas, and an upside-down egg and dark pattern ceiling; Robert Harrison, Uncle Bob's Corner, and the Masonic Temple that became Adams Drugs and then Ashworth's Drugs; Gray's Store with telephone number 16, and the Fuquay Bank of Cary, the only bank in town at the time; Gherkin's Downtown Auto Repairs, formerly known as Cary Service Station, and then Lloyd's Amico, that will soon hark back to its history and become Lloyd's Full Service. A theater that had movies and live performances that became a clothing store, auto parts store, and recording studio before coming full circle to once again be a theater. Rogers Motel and Restaurant, a two-generation family firm where ham biscuits were 15 cents and hamburgers were 90 cents. The Phillips House, built in Cary by a man named Cary, that was typical of houses on East Chatham Street, and today, nearly 100 years later, is home to a business. The streamlined, modern Art Deco WPTF building and its counterpart Williams House, it just happened to be owned by a couple married at WPTF, and just happens to share the identical architectural style. But we just can't prove the same architect was responsible for both. Chatham Street and downtown Cary will continue to evolve. We hope you'll join us for our future programs as we share the history of other parts of downtown Cary. If you're keen to learn more about this topic, Carla Michaels has written a blog entry that expands on tonight's presentation.
Yes.
You can read it on the Friends website.
Oh.
It's
Soon,
not posted yet.
Yeah, posted it.
soon.
Look for it soon.
Soon.
Lori Miller's photo, titled Horse-Drawn Memories, serves as a nice backdrop to remind you that we are the Friends of the Page Walker, a nonprofit volunteer organization with a mission to preserve, promote, and share Cary's history. We would be delighted if you visit our website, follow us on social media, and sign up for our newsletter and email updates. We partner with the town of Cary and with the town's Historic Preservation Commission, which works to preserve the historical, cultural, and architectural heritage of our town for future generations. This concludes our presentation, and thank you for attending. We can take a few questions before we adjourn for refreshments and conversation.